In this special episode, I'm delighted to bring you an extended version of a story we originally covered in September of 2022, when Medford greeted two unique airborne visitors. This World War II B-17 Flying Fortress and B-25 bomber touched down at the Rogue Valley International Airport as part of the West Coast Tour being undertaken by the Commemorative Air Force out of Mesa, Arizona. Now, I'm fascinated by aviation, and I love living history exhibits, so this was a fantastic opportunity to do some hands-on learning and speak with some local old-timers who actually experienced World War II.
My name is Roddy Charlton. I'm the team leader for the Commemorative Air Force here from Mesa, Arizona. We have our B-17 Sentimental Journey that we're going to be on tour today, along with our B-25 Made in the Shade. A little bit about the Commemorative Air Force that was founded in 1957 by Lloyd Nolan in Texas. He put this organization together to preserve World War II era aircraft and educate people about the airplanes and then save these airplanes for future generations. So Lloyd Nolan bought a P-51 and they called it the Red Nose. That's how the Commemorative Air Force was founded. And so at Mesa, we are one of the 160 units. We're one of the most active, and we've got 10 airplanes that we fly, and then we have a very active museum. So we're one of the few that take this B-17 and this B-25, and we take it all over the United States for about 5 months every summer, and it is a living history museum to bring it to people. They built 12,731 of these airplanes in World War II. Can you imagine 12,731 airplanes in 5 years? This particular airplane, again, the Sentimental Journey, this was built in November of 1944 and was too late for World War II. Brand new, they were going to scrap the airplane. And Kingman, Arizona was a big boneyard, what we call a graveyard for airplanes. And this airplane was destined to go there and to be eventually cut up for scrap. Once the war was over, they found out that the Philippine Islands is hundreds and hundreds of islands, and they didn't know a lot about the Philippines. So this airplane, specific airplane, spent 7 years flying in the Philippines, and they photo mapped the whole Philippine Islands. From there, they were going to scrap the airplane, and then it went to Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, and they put a boat underneath it, and it spent about 7 years doing overwater sea rescue with a boat underneath it, and then they were going to scrap the airplane, and then they needed an airplane to go to Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, and this airplane was a mothership, and they flew drone airplanes, which were unmanned B-17s, through above-ground nuclear tests there, and it did that for about 5 years, and then they were going to scrap it, and then a company in Chino, California, bought the airplane. Aero Union is the name of the company, and they bought this airplane to go fight forest fires with. It spent 19 years fighting forest fires, but they really stripped the airplane down to get all the weight out of it, and they took all the guns off it, and they made it very streamlined, so it had a lot less drag. At the end of that 19 years, they were going to scrap the airplane, and we had a dentist in Mesa, Arizona that bought the airplane, and he gave it to our Mesa Commemorative Air Force Base. And we took that airplane, and it took us 5 years to put it back into a World War II configuration. Since it was built in November of 1944, it's almost spent its whole career flying. The airplane has also been in 2 movies. All the Brave Young Men was one of the movies it was in, and then it was in 1941 with John Belushi, and that's a great movie to go see. Of those 13,731 airplanes, 6,000 never came back from Europe. So a reporter up there in Seattle termed the name Flying Fortress. He saw the airplane, he saw the guns on it, he says, that's a Flying Fortress. And that name really kind of stuck with the airplane. Again, everybody had a set of guns. So these twin guns right here, those belong to the bombardier. The navigator sat right behind him, and the navigator, again, helped the bombardier get to the target. These 2 guns on the side, those are all .50 caliber guns. Those belong to the navigator. So again, everybody had a gun. That's a Norton bomb sight right up there in front, and that was a very secret item during World War II. It was like a computer back then, and it took into things like ground speed and airspeed and drift, and it helped the bombardier find the right target. And that's why we did daylight precision bombing, is because we had a Norton bomb sight. That bomb sight actually took control of the airplane when they got near the target. And if you can imagine an airplane that was built and designed in the 30s, that it had like an autopilot that could steer the airplane to the target. So that was a very secret item. And a lot of times if that airplane was going to crash and they knew that, they threw that sight out so it would get damaged if it didn't fall into the enemy hands.
As a child, I dreamed of standing where I'm standing right now.
Wow.
And I had a book this thick that I kept of all of the pictures of aircraft that I could find.
Well, Claire, bless you for doing that.
My father was an immigrant, and he was glued to every commentator that talked about the war. I was as glued to it as he was. I didn't understand as much as he did. I was only 10 years old.
The big thing we use a lot of fuel. We burn 180 gallons of fuel an hour.
Oh.
And fuel for this airplane is about $7.50 a gallon, so that's a lot of fuel. Everything, again, on this airplane is original World War II B-17. We put in some extra flight instruments and some extra radios to make it comply with FAA requirements. But we've got a really top-notch maintenance crew back in Mesa, Arizona, and we all take really good care of this airplane.
I've never sat under a bomb before.
Well, the good news is that's a fiberglass bomb. This airplane could have carried 6,000 pounds of bombs, and it could have carried it like typically a mission would be an 8-hour mission, like to Berlin and back.
I like to say that when the Germans learned that I was coming out of that, they quit.
Are there any stories from that time that you like to tell? I understand.
Don't talk about it.
I found a wonderful man who was a great commander of submarines after the war, and that was enough for me.
How many years have you two been married?
About 30 years.
No, it's about 60.
About 60?
Yeah. I'm 95, you know.
You mean I put up with that for 60 years?
Yes.
The day of victory, well, we were waiting to go back on the carrier and replace the air group on it. So it was a great feeling. The first thing I wanted was out. I felt it took the best parts of my life, and it was a great place to be, and I wouldn't give it up. Well, we was clear across the Pacific. We covered the invasion of Guam, and we hit the Iwo and Chi-Chi, and so we hit most of it. Well, at times when, if I'd have been where I was supposed to be, I wouldn't be here. Yeah, I got a lot of stories. And they're starting to fade. I'm 100 years old. The big thing that impressed me was the guys I met. And burials at sea are hard to take.
Yeah, they look great.
That we really honor the veterans that flew in this airplane, and we honor the people that supported the airplanes, and we honor the families that were back here in the United States to do that.
My name's Ron. I'm the crew chief on the B-25, and I'm also a co-pilot on the aircraft. This is a B-25J model. I'm sure you've all heard of the Doolittle Raiders that bombed Tokyo in 1942. Those were B-model B-25s. Jimmy Doolittle was the commander of the raid. Somebody had a great idea to strike back at Japan, put 16 of these B-25s on the carrier Hornet, take them over to Japan, bomb Tokyo and a few other cities, then land in China and strike back at Japan, the first strike. They were discovered by a Japanese picket ship about 400 miles prior to where they intended to launch, so they launched early. That meant that they didn't have enough fuel to make their recovery bases in China. The raid was successful in that they bombed their targets in Japan, but then all the airplanes were lost in the recovery. Many of them ditched in the China Sea when they were out of gas. Some bailed out as the fuel reserves ran low. This particular airplane was built after that. It was built in 1944 in Kansas City. After the war, it came back to the United States, and it served as a navigation trainer for a while in the Army Air Corps. This one left the Army's hands and went into civilians' hands, took it down to Dothan, Alabama, stripped all of the military hardware out of it, turned it into a bug sprayer against fire ants down in Alabama. The Commemorative Air Force in Arizona got hold of the airplane in 1981, and we spent 28 years bringing it back to its wartime configuration.
I was on a farm and moved to Boise, Idaho, and the farm burned up. And then I got interested in aviation, joined the Navy, enlisted. And that lasted a while, and they said, "You want to stay in or get out?" I said, "Stay in, but I want to fly." They said, "You can't, because you have to go to college." So I went to college. Then I joined the Air Force. And one of the first things I did after flying the T-6, I flew the B-25.
Did you?
Yeah. So I got quite a few hours in all of advanced training in the B-25.
Can we add your signature to our Bombay?
Sure.
Okay.
I'd be honored.
We'd be honored to have your signature on the Bombay.
And that's good for Medford too.
Great.
How about that?
Thatcher,
I know.
Tokyo Raider.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Here's Ed Saylor.
Wow.
And you may remember Dick Cole was the last surviving Raider. He was the co-pilot of number 2 aircraft.
I didn't know those guys, but I've heard of them. Standing in this airplane takes me back. And it's all good. I love it.
Can you get up into the cockpit?
Yeah,
area?
I can.
If you're putting him up there, tie down the plane.
I bet you I remember.
Okay, here we go.
I'd love to fly it. Well, it feels like old times. It does. And it's good. Good airplane. Except for the wheels, taxi. You had to do it with brakes, in different brakes. And you had to do it carefully. If you got too much, and they were sensitive. So if you got too much brake, it'd spin. If it got over there, the nose wheel would cock and stay there. And you couldn't bring it out with just normal rudder. You had to go around and then bump it just right so you wouldn't shoot off the taxiway, and then bump it where it would make the wheel go straight, and then you had normal. But you had to bump it just right, or you'd hurt the nose wheel, or you'd still go around, and it was embarrassing, because they would brief you on this. Be very careful, don't cock the nose wheel. So I did it once, that's all. Boy, after that, I knew. There was a time in Alaska when we were changing seats, because I was evaluating the crew, and he bumped one switch, the altitude switch on the autopilot, it froze, and we couldn't figure out what the autopilot switch was off. But this was maintenance, and he didn't know he hit it. So we didn't know what the hell was causing it. But it took 2 people to land the airplane. We talked about bailing out and decided not to. Good landing, fortunately, but boy, you better not bounce. I had the co-pilot pushing as hard as he could push, and we were still flaring a little, and I was pushing. So we had a lot of power pushing that thing. Mm-hmm. It got slower, it was more and more. But we made it. Squadron commander met the airplane. He says, "Tell me about it." I says, "I'm embarrassed, I'm not talking." He says, "Oh, yes, you are." He said, "Well, I think you did good." I said, "Really?" They put in an emergency proposition to cover that immediately, and all the airplanes throughout Strategic Air Command were equipped with that covered. So you couldn't do that. So it turns out that I submitted the emergency request. So it turned out okay, but I felt like I had missed something. I was pretty lucky. And some of it I kind of made it happen, but volunteered for a few things. You're not supposed to do that. But it worked for me. Yeah. I'd do it over again. I'd change a few things. Want to go flying. Feels like old times. That's good.
We also are looking forward to bringing young people out to come and look at this airplane, not just the veterans, but we're looking at a STEM aviation program. And back at the Mesa site, we run a lot of classes for elementary and mid-school people about aviation. As you may be aware, there's a huge opportunity in the future for pilots and all kinds of maintenance people for airplanes. So STEM aviation is one of the things that we're pushing right now, along with honoring veterans like Larry Willis that's going to fly with us today.
And we flew 28 missions over Germany.
What was it like being in a ball turret on one of these things and actually flying missions?
I never even thought about that. I had a good crew. And they were going to crank me out if anything happened.
Yeah. Did you ever see combat?
Oh, all the time, yeah. Every mission, yeah. The flak was the worst because I was underneath, you know.
What does it feel like to be flying on this plane again today?
Oh, no, that's good. I got confidence in it.
We got something for you.
Oh, really?
Yes, for you.
On behalf of the Non-Commissioned Officers Association, Rope Chapter 1260, we'd like to present you with this World War II medallion for your service. You truly are part of the greatest generation.
Part of the great generation. Thank you, my man.
There we go. I won't try to turn it.
Thank you. There it is right there. Greatest generation.
We've been working through the NCOA to present these World War II medallions to commemorate the greatest generation. We take these medallions, we give them to World War II vets. We've given out over 200 of them so that they have something to show their kids and explain what the greatest generation is. It's all about, you know, coming out of the Great Depression, which is a tough time, and then going into for the duration war, and everybody at home was on mandatory rationing. You know, that was a sacrifice.
We raise money to give it away to help veterans. That's the purpose of our organization. Not just the medallions, but we support organizations that stand up to and for veteran suicide. You know, that's a big problem. We've recently lost one of our members to suicide, and it touches very close to home with us.
You'll find out one thing, too, is that when a veteran meets another veteran, there's a brotherhood that's there. Mm-hmm. Because why? They understand what they've gone through, and we can talk specifically to each other, and we understand. But then we support each other as well. And that's why after, well, I got 25 years, but after that, what are we doing? We're reaching out to our veterans again and continuously. Mm-hmm. Because why? They deserve it.
My dad spent all of World War II in the Pacific, and he was in the Army, and he went island to island. And my mom from Nebraska, a lot of her relatives came out, and they were part of the war effort like a lot of other people. And she worked at the Douglas Aircraft Factory in Long Beach. And she worked on the B-17 line. And that airplane that's flying today, one of only 4 airplanes that are flying today, my mom put the rivets in that vertical. So every time I fly that airplane, I put my hand against the skin and say a little prayer to my mom. And I think my mom's looking down at me. And I just hope she did a good job of putting those rivets in the airplane.
Not only does the Commemorative Air Force educate the public and let people get up close and hands-on with their airplanes, they also sell rides on short local flights as a major source of funding for their nonprofit. When Tripp and I were offered some seats on a flight, we jumped on the opportunity for this once-in-a-lifetime experience. I feel very official right now.
Welcome to the Commemorative Air Force. My name is Roddy Charlton, and I will be looking after you on this flight. This is a B-17G, and it holds a limited certificate of airworthiness.
So you guys are flying with us on the B-17 today?
Yes, we are, yeah. It's very exciting.
Are you excited?
Looking forward to this, yes. Yeah.
The reason is her father flew one of these in World War II.
He was in the service a long time. So I heard a lot of war stories and grew up knowing a lot about World War II because of that.
Have you ever gotten to do anything like this before?
No, this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing, yeah. My husband found out about it, so this is my birthday present.
Oh, fantastic. Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
This is pretty cool. What does it take to actually learn how to kind of go backwards and fly one of these old planes?
You know, it's not going backwards. The fundamentals are the same, but the technology is obviously a little dated. Mm-hmm. So it's a little more demanding than flying some of the newer, aircraft, airliners, and that sort of thing, because they rely heavily on, technology and automation. Everything on this airplane is done manually and mentally. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of fun. It is.
How are you feeling right now, Larry?
Oh, I'm all right. I just got confidence,
And so I guess is that the ball turret where you used to be stationed?
Yeah.
One thing I'll say is that it's really hot in here.
Very warm.
Very warm. And this flight suit, as cool as it feels to wear, it is not helpful.
It's a Nomex flight suit. So you have a U.S. regulation military flight suit on, and it's fire retardant, and it doesn't breathe well. And then again, the airplane, for weight purposes, there is absolutely no insulation in this airplane. And again, if you can imagine going deep strike into Europe, like to Berlin, and you're a young man, the oldest guy might have been 23 years old on the airplane, the pilot in command, he might have had 25 hours of flight time. For them to be in flight for 8 and 10 hours, typically this airplane would be flying at about 23 to 25,000 feet. It'd be like minus 40 degrees. The yellow tanks you see are all supplemental oxygen. So even today, above 10,000 feet, we have to have oxygen. And so wearing a parachute, maybe a flak vest, having the big heavy gloves and a big warm jacket. Some of these, and this airplane also has electrical plug-ins. Some of the flight suits had a little electrical units in them that heated them up. And some people liked them and others didn't like them because if they got a set of flak, your suit caught on fire. And then you had something else to deal with. So we're going to do an engine start.
Okay, maybe look outside.
We're going to stay basically in the valley here. The visibility is a little challenging today, just primarily because of the fires around the area. But we'll kind of head out towards the northeast, and we can get out there about 15, 20 miles, and then work our way back to the airport. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience, so enjoy it.
Wow, so that happened. That is definitely one of the most interesting experiences, most thrilling experiences I've had shooting Us As We Are so far. This is living history right here, and this is some of the most special living history we've gotten to encounter so far, and possibly some of the most interesting living history I'm ever going to get to encounter. Big thank you to CAF Air Base Arizona for making this happen. Getting to fly in this B-17 was just incredible. Anyway, folks, I'm Keegan Van Hook, and this is Us As We Are.